Greetings, fellow Earthlings. I hope you're well. Long time no speak. As promised, I am doing a video on some more female kind of celebs and VIPs because that's what I said in my last video I wanted to kind of concentrate on. And of course, there have been some really interesting developments in the last week or so, and the astrology has been quite striking. So I thought, given that Joe Biden has announced that he plans to step down and not run in the 2024 presidential race, and that Kamala Harris may well be the candidate that the Democratic Party ends up endorsing, I thought it was worth having a look at her chart, not just from an astrology point of view, but also from a human design perspective, to see what that can tell us. Because so often in politics, it does seem to boil down to these power dynamics that you can't really explain otherwise. But and somehow the astrology itself, it just kind of adds another dimension to the astrology, so you can kind of see what's going on that you wouldn't necessarily be able to explain otherwise. So let's quickly have a look at her chart and see what this can tell us about her as a candidate, as a person, and then we'll have a look at the human design and also compare her chart to a couple of other people that potentially she may choose to run with, and also with Donald Trump. So first of all, a little bit of background about her. She was born in California and she's the eldest of two daughters. So I think that already gives us a sense that she's probably a girl's girl. She's the daughter of immigrant parents. She had a mother who was an Indian cancer researcher, and her father was a Jamaican economics professor. So quite an academic background, and I gather that they used to have some really interesting debates around the dinner table. So somebody who was brought up to sort of express herself, to think for herself, to voice her opinion, and to back up what she is saying with, with good arguments and proof and that kind of thing. So no surprise then that she decided to study, first of all, political science and economics for her undergrad degree, and then she got a law degree from the University of California. And apparently this was quite a formative time for her in terms of molding her personality and many of her ideas. And she then went into law as a career for quite some time. She began a career in public service, first in the Alameda County District Attorney's Office, and then I think after about a year, she became the district attorney for San Francisco. So for quite a long time, between 2004 to 2011, before being elected the first female and first African-American to serve as California's Attorney General. So this is the top lawyer, essentially, in sort of the San Francisco Crown Prosecution Service, we would say, here in the UK. So she was a top law enforcement official from 2011 until 2017. And then after that, she decided to move into politics, which is actually a natural kind of progression. If you are already sort of a district attorney, then it seems natural to kind of segue into politics. So she became a US Senator for California in 2017, and she served until 2021. She launched a presidential bid actually in 2019, but was ultimately unsuccessful at getting the nomination, and ultimately joined Joe Biden's ticket when he selected her to be his running mate in 2020. And of course they won, and she became the first African-American and first Asian VP of the United States. So kind of a natural progression, if you like, from, moving from law to public service type of law, so kind of criminal justice and that kind of thing, public service, and then from there, to senator, and then to president. So it's not, she has quite a lot of experience, and she has worked her way up gradually, and obviously her background is law, so we do have to kind of bear that in mind as we sort of like move forward. Now, her birth chart. Interestingly enough, she is a sun sign Libra, and of course that is represented by the scales of justice. So quite fitting that she then became, first of all, a lawyer, and then a district attorney and an attorney general and that type of thing. It's also interesting that she's got Gemini rising, because Gemini is a sign strongly associated with politics. It's Mercury ruled, so these people tend to be natural communicators and quite good at negotiating and that kind of thing. And you can see that her chart ruler, Mercury, is in the very astute and sharp sign of Scorpio in her 5th house with the sun. So it's quite strong, actually. It's almost kind of saying that her degree in law, which you could see as being represented by the sun in Libra, together with her kind of sharp mind and her interest in power, or in sort of power dynamics, or using power to kind of get things done, to bring about social justice, and the two things kind of combine quite well, actually. They're right next to each other, obviously, in the zodiac, and it's interesting that she's got this really interesting aspect pattern with lots of stars and things. So she's got 2 grand trines that sort of make up this star aspect, and then she's also got a kite, which you can see here with a minor grand trine that's got the moon at the apex, and then it's got this Sun-Mercury conjunction at the bottom. So that all looks quite fortuitous. It's sort of joining up things that otherwise might clash a little bit. So, for instance, she was born close to the full moon. You can see that the sun and the moon are they're almost exactly opposite each other. And that usually happens at full moon. The sun and the moon are on opposite sides of the earth. The moon in Aries and the sun in Libra. Now, it's interesting because those, in terms of dignities and debilities, are reversed. So the sun is dignified or exalted in Aries. And here she's got the sun in Libra. So the sun is in fall, and she's got the moon in Aries. The moon is exalted in the Venus-ruled sign of Taurus, but here it's in Aries. So it's not a kind of natural sign for the moon to be in. It's quite fiery, and it sometimes can be a little bit self-involved. It can be sort of very much about me, what about me type of thing. But I mean, for somebody who is fighting for justice for other people, it's probably not a bad thing. But as you can see, the luminaries are essentially opposite each other. So you've got this sort of ameliorating aspects which help to temper this kind of polarization, if you like, with this grand trine, which you can see connects up Mars in Leo, and then she's got the South Node with the part of Fortune in Sagittarius. So essentially a grand fire trine there. And then you can also see that the moon is connected to the nodes, to the North Node here, and that's the ascendant as well. And then to Saturn in Aquarius, which is very close to her midheaven in the sign, or the house rather, of law and of kind of social mores and ethics and that kind of thing. So quite a favorable combination. And she's also got quite a revolutionary and fiery combination of Uranus, Pluto, and Venus. Now, Venus helps to offset what could otherwise be described as quite an explosive combination, actually. Uranus and Pluto both being associated with nuclear weapons. So one does get the sense that, especially in the sign of Virgo, that potentially, I would say that if somebody corrects her, like particularly within her family, I'm thinking of those debates around the dinner table. If somebody suggested that she was wrong, she probably might have lost her temper. But luckily, she does have Venus here to sort of, as I say, to sort of make nice and to add a bit of charm. And I think that's what we tend to see with her. And I think it masks what is actually a very formidable combination. I think this is somebody who's very details oriented, who, a bit like Margaret Thatcher, would spend like hours going through her red boxes at night. She didn't sleep very much. I think she got about 4 hours sleep a night. And she always knew the facts, and she was very, the devil's in the detail. She was very good with detail. And I think if somebody trifles with her, like say Donald Trump, for example, and wants to sort of talk in these generalities, make these hyperbole statements that have very little basis in fact, I don't think she will have any truck with that. I think she will come down on him like a ton of bricks and really sort of put him right, shall we say, when it comes to facts and that kind of thing. So that's, I think, a placement to watch. And then she's also got this Mars in flamboyant Leo, which I think is quite good actually for a politician. It does add a little bit of flair, a bit of charisma. It makes people quite go-getting. They're not afraid necessarily of kind of pushing themselves forward if they feel like they've got a good idea or a suggestion, or can sort of help to move things forward, because of course Mars is really good for motivating, for driving things forward, for creating momentum, and for initiating as well. So I don't think she's necessarily the wallflower that up till now we may think that she is, because she's had to take a back seat to Biden. She's had to sort of play second fiddle. And it's possible that once she's actually given permission, if you like, to sort of step forward into the spotlight, that she won't have any trouble with that whatsoever. Now, Mars in her chart rules her 11th house. So I do think that, in group situations, she's probably quite take charge. So it'll be interesting to see how the Democratic convention goes. And then I'm trying to think what else is sort of important. So Saturn as well. Saturn in Aquarius is an interesting combination. It does tend to make people quite cool and almost scientific, quite attached in their approach to humanitarian issues. But nonetheless, these are people that will lay the groundwork, will do this sort of the graft to make sure that a structure is created, some kind of framework like say, for example, a legal framework within which change can happen. So that's actually quite a pragmatic combination. And I think it helps to offset the fact that she's got the midheaven in Pisces, which can be a little bit nebulous, sometimes a little bit flaky. Pisces is very fluid, so it doesn't necessarily always know what it wants. It can be changeable. And I think to have Saturn in Aquarius there, I think really helps to sort of steady, because it's a fixed sign and it's air as well. So it adds kind of logic and the sort of mental or intellectual element to things, so that you can think through decisions about how to help people, because of course Pisces is a very altruistic sign. So it really does want to sort of help on many levels. It's very altruistic, very inclined towards charitable acts and so on. But here you've got the sort of very pragmatic, but also sensible Saturn here that can sort of help, look at how do we do this? What are the steps that are needed to actually make this program work, or to devise this program, or whatever. And you'll see from her aspects that Saturn is making some very positive aspects to her luminaries, as well as to that Mercury, which is her chart ruler. So it's quite stable and steady, and it suggests somebody who is quite consistent, who's not going to chop and change in terms of her policy decisions, somebody who is also does have gravitas. Actually, I must say, I was a little skeptical when I heard that, she might be the candidate. And I think possibly because we were seeing more of that fluffy Libran, make nice kind of energy, but, never be fooled necessarily by that in a Libran, especially if you've got Scorpio placements close by. This is very often the iron fist in the velvet glove type of thing. Somebody who knows how to apply steely determination, but in a very charming way, or very persuasive way. And as I say, with Gemini as the chart ruler, we are kind of talking about somebody who can be quite persuasive. So I think that's interesting. And she does also have this part of fortune on her descendant. So essentially for her, good fortune and luck comes from partnering with other people. And we can see that as her partnership with Joe Biden as a really good example of this, that essentially he, through putting her on the ticket as a VP, elevated her political status, and potentially now, will not only put her in the White House as the first African-American and Asian VP, but potentially also the first female African-American and Asian president. I mean, that's quite something. So in that sense, you can see that that part of fortune is working quite strongly in her favor. That who she partners with is very important, and therefore I think who she chooses as her VP, if she does get the nomination from the Democratic Party, will be really important. That partnerships are really important, and we'll see that even more strongly when we look at her human design. The other thing to say is that, Libra works very well, generally speaking, in partnerships, especially sort of, just one-to-one kind of partnerships. But it's interesting that she's got that Mars ruling the 11th house too, so she can kind of take charge when it comes to groups as well. And she's also got the moon in the 11th house. So this should give her a good grasp on a sort of subconscious level of what a group wants. So a kind of like in terms of the hive mind or group think, I think she can get a strong gut sense, if you like, gut level sense of what the group wants, and help to drive it forward with her Mars here in the 3rd house, which is the house of communication, self-expression, your local environment, and that kind of thing. The only thing I would say is that Mars can sometimes be a little bit forceful, and Mars in Leo can be a bit bossy. So that's possibly also what some people have kind of picked up about her, that she can sometimes seem a little bit forceful. And I think that's because of her square here to Jupiter in Taurus, that this fixed square can sometimes make her seem a little bit overbearing, possibly a bit self-righteous from time to time. It is in her 12th house, so it's probably not something she's aware of consciously, that she might sometimes be overly, not sanctimonious, but just kind of feel this very strong drive to push forward what she feels is right. When Mars and Jupiter are negatively aspected, it tends to create a kind of might is right type of energy. And, so I think that's the only thing she does need to be careful of, because Jupiter rules her descendant. So it will affect her partnerships, her business partnerships, her working partnerships, and her sort of core relationships, her significant others. So she does have to be careful not to be too forceful and too, as I say, like aggressive or overly pushy. I think that's probably a good way of putting it. But I think over time, she's probably learned how to sort of temper those. And I think it's helpful to have, as I say, Mars in good aspect to her moon. So I think emotionally she would have picked this up. Maybe friends would have told her, especially female friends. And this, there's also this trine to the descendant and to the part of fortune and the South Node. So she's kind of coming in with some experience of this, I think, from past lives. So she will have kind of natural inner resources to draw on to help her to sort of learn how to kind of temper that Mars and to make it work for her rather than against her. It's interesting, for example, that she's got Chiron in the 10th house, and that it's opposing this very strong Uranus-Pluto conjunction, the stellium with Venus. So I think possibly through her family relationships, she's sort of learned maybe how to again work with that energy in a way that's constructive, because as I say, it can be quite explosive and also quite insistent on change in a sort of quite in a forceful way, like wanting to push through reforms maybe too quickly, and then maybe coming unstuck, maybe colleagues distancing themselves from her, or maybe feeling that she's not a team player. That's certainly a possibility if you've got Mars ruling your 11th house cusp. So I think over time she's probably had to learn how to sort of temper that, to soften that a little bit. But because it's an opposition, she'll bounce between the two extremes sometimes if she's feeling particularly conflicted. And it's the same with her sun and her moon, that sometimes, it's that heart-head sort of combination. Sometimes she'll feel pulled down to that Sun-Mercury combination, and sometimes, her emotions will get the better of her, especially in sort of, as I say, when it comes to her friends or group situations, that kind of thing. So, an interesting chart. As I say, she, a lot of stuff that is potentially will work in her favor as a politician. She just has to really watch the square, I think, between Mars and Jupiter, and also this opposition that kind of factors in Pluto and Uranus. And if we look at what Pluto and Uranus rule, Pluto, for example, rules her sixth house of work. So she's probably a bit of a workaholic, I would say, especially if she's very focused on a particular getting something done, like to sort of, she'll want to be in control. She'll want to have like a complete handle on it. So she may have difficulty delegating, be a little bit of a control freak and want to know all the details. So possibly a little bit of micromanaging tendencies there. And then with Uranus, this rules the cusp of her ninth house. So this is quite altruistic energy. This is definitely somebody who's idealistic, who wants the best for humanity, and wants to fix problems. I mean, this is the great thing about Virgo, is it's such an excellent problem solver, but it can be, as I say, a workaholic, very high standards, so perfectionist tendencies, which, in the workplace are good, but they can also hamper sometimes. They can sort of like make it difficult to let go of a project until it's 100% perfect. I mean, as we know, nothing is perfect ever. Sometimes you just got to let something go. And maybe also, as I say, like, can sweat the small stuff. Now, hopefully Venus will help to offset this, and help her to sort of just maintain, like, first of all, sort of smooth things over with colleagues if she does sort of like lose her cool or become a little bit of a like a control freak, OCD about things. But also, I mean, it probably means that it's probably why she's known for laughing so much, that she uses that kind of human charm to sort of like not disguise the sort of the sharp that sort of I don't want to say that kind of killer instinct, but I mean Pluto is, as I say, very focused and quite strong, and but that's what's needed, to get things done, especially if you are going to be the leader of the free world. So in other words, I don't think she's a pushover, put it that way. She's not somebody who's going to be lazy and going to get everybody else to do the work and then take the credit for it either. And she's also got that Mars in there, which can help to drive things forward. So she's a good motivator and somebody who can keep momentum going, which I think is important when it comes to the wheels of bureaucracy, getting things through the various houses of representatives and the Senate and so on. So now let's have a look at her human design, because this is where we start to look at power dynamics. And it's interesting that she, as a type, is a 2-4 generator. So this is usually sort of from a purely energetic perspective, this tends to be the follower rather than the leader. But we'll have a look at some of her other aspects too, because you can see she's got sacral authority. So this means that she makes decisions based using gut instinct. And that her best way of working is to attract opportunities and suggestions to her, and then use her gut instinct to decide what feels right, what she wants to sort of respond to positively, and what she wants to say no to. That's the sort of the natural way that she would work. Now, in terms of her sort of like her cross, if you like, in human design, it's similar to the angles. Like, what is her purpose? What is she here to sort of to work on? She has the right angle cross of laws, which is interesting given her legal background. And these people are here to set the rules for the community to function in a productive way. So interesting is to say that she did go into law and then law enforcement. Now, these people are usually traditionalists, so their lawmaking standards tend to be inherited, which I think is, again, perfect for what she did. She's just following the laws of the land and of the Constitution. She doesn't sort of make them up. But what this can do is it can make her typically less open to outside feedback. And as I say, I think that Mars in Leo, in her ruling her 11th house, may make her sometimes a little bit forceful. So this is something she's here to learn, is to listen as well as to sort of speak. And the advice is to consider input from the rest, because you can't live with the rules that you set. If you can't live with the rules that you set, then conflict becomes inevitable. So there is a need to take input from other people and then to modify where necessary, but essentially a traditionalist. So I think that's interesting. And then she's also split definition. And essentially what this means is that the way that her energy centers are connected up is not all in one big loop. So, for example, she's got the sacral center connected to the root, but it's not connected to either the splenic center or to the emotional center. And the same here. She's got the top two centers, the third eye and ajna, and the mental center connected to her throat, but then the throat isn't connected to any other center. So this can sometimes make a person come across as a little bit schizoid. They can sort of be either in the one set of centers or the other. And it will depend a lot on who she's working with, because other people will help to connect you up to, they'll help you complete channels that you don't have sort of activated. So I think it will very much depend on who she's working with and what environment she's in as to whether she's kind of in her head and doing the kind of lawyer thing, or whether she's more grounded and in her more sort of embodied energy, if you like. So she'll tend to flip between the two things. And she probably has different people that she does these different types of activities with. So essentially, if we want to look at the definition of a split definition, at least 4 centers are defined in 2 unconnected groups. So this means that Kamala will usually look for other people to bridge the gap. And internally, this can feel like 2 separate entities operating independently. So that's why I'm saying about that kind of schizoid energy. Communication is slower and it takes time to get things clear in your mind. When another person shows up to bridge the gap, you feel complete, as I say, because it will close channels that will help her to connect her up the whole center, the whole kind of the complete chart up, if you like. So the wisdom for split definitions is to understand that you are all right as a split and nothing needs to be fixed. So just kind of coming to terms with the fact that internally you're probably a little bit of a that you have these kind of 2 personalities or 2 aspects to you that you flip between. So now the only thing, the only sort of reservation that I do have, as I say, is that she is a 2-4 generator. Now the 2-4 type is an interesting one. And we've seen it before in some politicians like Jeremy Hunt, for example. And the thing with the 2-4 profile is that they need a lot of downtime. This is a type that is quite private and is essentially by nature a hermit. But unconsciously, they need other people to actually get them out of their shell and to bring them opportunities and to kind of call them out into the world, if you like. So aloneness is a theme. Until the right opportunity comes along. So these are very private people who need a lot of space and time in which to recalibrate to work. So she will prefer to work on her own, to integrate ideas and experiences. But this type also longs for the validation of others. And so often what will happen is that the 2-4 will kind of be working alone, and then a friend will call or a colleague will come and find them and say, hey, what, are you free? How about we do this? Or are you interested in listening to this project or whatever? So usually other people see what you're good at and you don't see it yourself. So that's why there's this need for kind of like the 4th line, which is the first line that is kind of public, if you like, in terms of the hexagrams. So opportunities come through other people, and we see that too with her descendant. If we just go back to that. You can see here with the pot of fortune on her Sagittarius descendant that opportunities come through other people. So this is kind of confirmed by her human design. But as I say, you do find with this type that campaigning and stuff will be quite difficult for them unless they have an hour or 2 set aside in the evening where they can just be by themselves and they can process what has happened during the day. Otherwise, they will become quite grumpy and potentially a little bit reclusive or sort of like overstretched or overwrought type of thing. So I think if you are the scheduler, you need to sort of bear this in mind. And then let's have a look at her sun and her moon and some of her power centers, because that's obviously going to be important. She's got the Sun in gate 50, line 2. So that is, where's here? So in the splenic center, which is not activated. So that's interesting. So this particular placement is designed to help preserve stability, and we've seen that with her Saturn. So to help preserve stability and honor traditional wisdom. So again, this sense of not trying to sort of like be too much of a reformer. So part of her life path is about being responsible for values that enrich both the local community and society at large. So a great sort of guardian of, what the founding fathers kind of wanted to inject into the Constitution, if you like. So learning to be strong and consistently uphold your values would enable you to maintain a core of inner calm no matter how others react. So it's about, that sort of still point in the center of a storm type of thing. So a great stabilizer, I think. If there's a crisis, she's probably the one that sort of helps to kind of like keep things on an even keel, which is a great asset to have if you are a leader. But then her moon is interesting now. Bearing in mind that the moon is on the opposite side of the zodiac from her. So her moon is in gate 3, line 2, and we find that in the sacral center here. So this is a gate of new beginnings. It's quite a sort of an innocent gate, actually. So emotionally speaking, you are drawn to breaking with the old ways. So in this sense, it's the complete opposite of the sun. And as a result, she may feel conflicted. But I think she would anyway, because as I say, she's born at a full moon. So what the heart and the head want are on opposite ends of the spectrum, and you've got to try and find that sort of compromise position in the middle. So she may have a tendency, especially when younger, to rely on the advice and ways of others, but then end up feeling internally unmoored. And so the best way forward for her is to trust her own ways, to listen to sort of maintain, to stay strong, true to her values. And this will help maintain a clear perspective and help her to persevere in times of sort of turbulence, emotional turbulence. And, with that moon in the 11th, probably this would have come through friends or through group situations, that it would have made her feel a little bit scattered, if you like. So some principles of organizing may be needed, which she does have with all that Virgo stuff. So I think she's, in terms of her chart, a lot of things balance out quite nicely. Now, in terms of leadership, she doesn't have the traditional leadership center switched on, which is the will center. So the other one that's important for initiating and actually making things happen is the throat. Now, it is switched on. It's connected to, as I say, her kind of mental centers. But it's not connected to any of the what we call the sort of motor centers, the ones that can make something happen, that give energy to things, that can sort of almost make it manifest, make it so. So that's potentially a little bit problematic unless she can find someone, for example, who's got gate 21, that will switch the will center on and connect up the throat to the will center. So she's not set up to work as a traditional leader, more of a thought leader and a strategist. So this is because of her well-connected ajna, her third eye, and her kind of mental center, her crown center. So very good at creating policy, thinking through policy, that kind of thing. But she might need other people's help to actually implement ideas. As I say, because she doesn't have the will center switch on, or the throat connected up to anything. In terms of her awareness, she's got more of the what they call the left side activated. So she's very good at thinking through policy, developing strategies. So this is more logical. A very focused perspective, which I think Pluto will certainly help with, and so will that stuff in Virgo. Seeing things in a detailed way is how you function. And indeed, we've seen that with those very strong Virgo placements. This is someone who's very much into the details. She's not going to miss much. So if you work for her, you have to know your stuff, basically. So it's key that she's very clear about what she wants, because otherwise the subconscious stuff can manifest, so that the sort of the emotional stuff and the subconscious stuff from the moon that she can pick up in group situations. So that's something that she potentially has to be careful of. Now I thought, the next thing to do is to compare her chart to Donald Trump's. And I think just purely in terms of type, there is a discrepancy. This is potentially a little bit of a problem. So Donald Trump is a manifesting generator, which is one of the most powerful types in human design. And that's because they have the combination of the throat center being activated, but also having it connected to what we call a motor center. So this is somebody who can literally speak things into into reality. And we can see that with the way that he fundraises. I mean, most people are agog that somebody who's a convicted felon still manages to fundraise as well as he does. And this is because he's a manifesting generator. So he has emotional authority, which I think makes a lot of sense. He does seem to make decisions very much based on kind of his emotional reactions to things, which aren't always necessarily the most pleasant, but that's how he functions. So that I think that's reflected in the way that he speaks and his reactions to things, that it does very much come from a sort of an emotional place rather than a kind of a logical place. Although he does have the Arsenal center switched on. So in that sense, people like Hillary Clinton have talked about his, he seems to have this knack, this instinct for knowing what's going to work in front of the cameras or what's going to work from a sort of spectacle point of view. And I suspect it's because of this Arsenal center being switched on and connected to the throat. So he just has this innate sense of what's going to work in terms of the media, in terms of stunts and that kind of thing, like a performer by nature. And he also has the will center switched on. So this is very powerful. He's got the throat connected to the will center. So this is someone that people are going to listen to, even though what he says isn't necessarily well thought through or based in fact. It doesn't matter from an energetic point of view. He, as I say, he has this ability to make people listen to him. And I think we can see that in the Republican Party, how they all kind of kowtow to him. It does seem illogical. And I think human design is the only way that, that explains this properly, or kind of, in a way that makes sense from a kind of energetic point of view. Now, you compare that to Kamala Harris, who's got the throat center switched on. She's much more logical and sort of sensible. She's got that intuitive side switched on, but she's also got the logic going on. But she doesn't have, as I say, the will center connected up to the throat, and she doesn't have a motor center connected either. So she will need a running mate, ideally, who through their human design will connect her up either to the throat, to the will center, or to one of the motor centers, so that she could function fully, be in full power, if you like, from a sort of an energy perspective. So I thought it might be quite interesting to have a look and see if any of her potential running mates or any prominent members of the Democratic Party have centers that would do this. But the other thing that I thought of is that she does have gate 10 activated here. And this forms part of what we call the channel of power, the 1034, which is often connected to people who on some level have this ability to sort of unleash power. Like, not necessarily always for themselves. It depends on how their chart is set up, but it sort of connects them into a sort of like almost a primary energetic source that is willpower. So that would also be a good one for her to have switched on. So that channel here would require someone with gate 34 to sort of complete the channel, and that's in astrology terms would be the sort of early degrees of Sagittarius. That's where gate 34 sits in terms of the, in relation to the zodiac. So I thought, well, let's have a look and see whether anybody can help her in that regard. Let's look at some of the candidates that have been mooted, or just, as I say, prominent people in the Democratic Party. So the first one I thought I'd look at is AOC. Now, obviously, she isn't at this stage putting herself forward, and probably is considered sort of inexperienced, or maybe doesn't have the right kind of like credentials and that sort of thing. But she does, interestingly, have this channel of power connected up, and she also has the will center switched on. She doesn't have gate 21 kind of on, but if you can see that she would essentially connect up Kamala's ID center to the sacral center, and then also the will center. So this whole section would be sort of like switched on, and that would give her the ability to be heard sort of more, and to sort of like, I don't want to say impose her will, but give orders that would then be carried out. Otherwise, what tends to happen to people who don't have a defined will center is that other people refuse to listen to them. They kind of rebel, or they subvert, or they just think, well, who are you, like, to tell me? It's purely energetic. So that would really help quite a lot. And as I say, it would sort of like give her access to this channel of power, which I think, would be advantageous. And by the same token, Kamala has the throat center switched on, but they don't seem to have the matching channels that would help Kamala to switch on AOC's throat center, I don't think. Well, maybe, no, actually it would via the Ajna center. There's a channel that's sort of complete here. So it would actually switch that on, but then it wouldn't be connected up to any of the other centers. Nonetheless, it's interesting. So that was just one thing that I kind of thought of, because both of these people are generators. So again, from an energetic point of view, not necessarily natural leaders. They need to be invited. The opportunity needs to present itself, sort of thing. So I think it's interesting that Kamala did it gradually, progressively through a career in law. She sort of worked her way up the ladder gradually through the sort of the traditionally laid out path for a politician. But let's have a look at the next person. So the other person I was quite interested in was Andy Bashir. Now, he is one of the senators that people are talking about as potentially a candidate that Kamala might consider for her VP. Now, he's an interesting one because he's also a manifesting generator like Trump, and he also has emotional authority. So he's an interesting one. And also I thought what was interesting is that he comes from a southern state, so he would bring some swing voters with him. And also he's quite big on abortion. And I think that, with so much on the line as far as female reproductive rights and that kind of thing are concerned, that the sort of female issues are going to be front and center, and they'll be highlighted even more if Kamala kind of gets on the ticket. I think just by the sheer nature of, her gender and that kind of thing. And so to have the backing of a white male from a southern state who also campaigned and won his gubernatorial campaign on the abortion issue, I think would be a real asset, actually. Now, his chart is quite powerful. If we have a look here, you can see that he doesn't have the 34, but he does have, he's got this connection between the throat and the splenic center, which is very instinctive. It's able to make decisions very quickly that are usually the right ones, and then to kind of make them happen with the throat center on. And he's also got the will center on, plus he has gate 21, so he would complete this channel for Kamala. So to me, the combination looks quite formidable, to be honest. And also, he's got all the centers switched on that she doesn't. So it's almost, as I say, that, and she has centers that he doesn't have switched on, these two at the top. So together, the two of them are more powerful than they are separately. He's also 3-5. So he kind of brings what she's missing to the party in terms of type, you know, the third and the fifth line. She's got the second and the fourth. And 3/5s are natural communicators. So I think, she, you know, if she was struggling to sort of articulate a particular policy or wasn't kind of cutting through in terms of her message, that he could kind of come in and explain things in a way that would cut through and that would get what she wanted to say heard. So quite a formidable combination, I think, there. He also has, so he's got the missing gate 11 to complete, as I said, the connection between throat and head for him. So she will switch on his top centers and help him to think more methodically, clearly, that kind of thing. And as I say, he has the correct gates to switch on her leadership centers here and also connect up her spleen center to her throat, helping to make decisions more quickly, which I think might be a problem for her, given, as I said, that she's a traditionalist and that she has that sun-moon split type of thing. So, yeah, I think, you know, I didn't want to do all of the candidates. I just thought we have a little taster, essentially, and when we know more, like once they've had the convention and they've chosen the candidates, then we can come back and look at this in a little bit more detail. But it's interesting to kind of speculate, you know, and as I say, like, I do think we have to bear in mind that, you know, Donald Trump is formidable from an energetic point of view. He might not necessarily have, like, great policies or have thought things out, but on a purely sort of animal-like level, he is a very powerful character, and we do have to bear that in mind, because that does seem to have an effect on how people vote. So, yeah, I hope that she does select the right running mate if she does get the nomination, and that she's able to kind of, you know, beat him for once and for all. Yeah. So those are my kind of initial thoughts. I'm probably going to do a couple of posts for my subscribers. So if you're interested, go to the Astro Insights blog and subscribe. It's free. And basically what I'll do is, if I do a post for subscribers, it will come out to you as a newsletter. And then if you want to sort of like visit the site and look at stuff in more depth, you will have access to it, whereas the sort of general public won't. But yeah, I hope you found that interesting. I did want to say, if anybody does have information for Keir Starmer, I'm still quite keen to do a profile on him, but I prefer to have house placements, so I need time of birth. So if anybody does, please contact me. I'd really appreciate it. But anyway, yeah, exciting times. Lots, I think, to kind of look forward to between now and November, particularly with this Democratic convention coming up. Quite exciting, I think, politically speaking. So, yeah, I hope you've enjoyed that, and see you soon.